Hello. Today we're going to be looking at the rise of Nazism, which is another factor that came after World War I and as a result of World War I. And this is focusing on Standard 3A as well as 3B. First, let's talk about a man named Adolf Hitler. In 1899, Adolf Hitler was born in Austria, and he moved to Munich as a teenager in 1913. Before his political career, Hitler was a German soldier who fought in World War I. Like many Germans, his sense of nationalism was very strong, and he was furious when Germany lost the war and had to sign the Treaty of Versailles. The Treaty of Versailles was negotiated by Allied leaders who had very little input from Germany. It forced Germany to accept blame for starting World War I, and it gave out very harsh punishments for doing so. Germany lost land, its military, and were forced to pay reparations to many destroyed countries. When the treaty was signed in June of 1919, like many Germans, Hitler was angry. After the war, the Weimar Republic, a democratic government, was set up in Germany. The new government worked to rebuild Germany's economy, but paying reparations was too hard for them to do. Millions of dollars were leaving the country for France and Great Britain. Because so much money was going to other countries, Germany was not able to rebuild themselves and fell into an economic depression. Prices went up as goods became scarce and hard to find. Basic items like food and clothing weren't available. Men had trouble finding jobs to support their families, and the value of German money was extremely inflated. Just to give you an idea of how inflation works, this chart at the top is comparing the German mark to a US dollar. The lower the number, the better the value. The higher the number, as it shows in November of 1923, the less valuable it is. So obviously, before World War II happened, the value of the German mark was very, very, very low and extremely inflated. People were using the Deutschmark, which was the German currency, to fly kites and to burn for fuel. As the economic situation worsened, more and more people blamed the government. Hitler was very angry with the situation and decided to enter politics. He began to give powerful speeches that many Germans agreed with. Soon, Hitler became the elected leader of the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or the Nazis. In 1923, Hitler attempted to overthrow the Weimar Republic and take control of Germany. Hitler's coup failed and he was sentenced to 9 months in prison. While he was incarcerated or in jail, he wrote a book called Mein Kampf, which outlined his plan to save Germany. Hitler's ideas included expanding the German land, eliminating impure races, and creating a German dictatorship. Once released, he continued to give his speeches and gained more and more support for the Nazis. In 1929, in the United States, the stock market crashed, causing economic depression that was felt across the world. At the time, Germany was being supported by loans from the U.S. banks. When the market crashed, the banks needed Germany to repay their debts immediately, but they couldn't. As a result, German businesses failed, and again, many people lost their jobs. Germans were furious and looked to Hitler for help. Hitler promised to restore Germany and make it a world power again. He also promised to protect Germany's people by increasing their military and war material production, which is a direct violation of the Treaty of Versailles. Hitler also promised to unite German people by placing the blame for the country's problems on the Jewish population. He also planned to increase German land. In 1932, the Nazi Party won the majority vote at 37% in Germany's parliament, and Hitler was appointed Germany's chancellor in 1933. Hitler immediately began changing the democratic country into a fascist one, led by a dictator who controlled the military. He now had total control and banned all opposing political parties. Anyone who spoke out against him was threatened by the Nazis, sent to a concentration camp for political prisoners, or killed. Hitler and the Nazis soon had all power in Germany, and right away he began to violate the terms of the Treaty of Versailles. He promised to rebuild the military, which he did, and reopened factories to build weapons. He stopped reparation payments and began to expand the German Empire by taking over neighboring land. In 1938, Hitler annexed Austria and took over Czechoslovakia. Initially, Great Britain and France didn't stop Hitler because they didn't want conflict. And then on September 1st, 1939, Germany invaded Poland. And this is what started World War II. Let's discuss the Holocaust, which is also a result of World War I and the Nazis, and happened during World War II. Hitler's army was on a mission to take control of Europe and purge the continent of impure races. He blamed the Jews for Germany's problems after World War I and wanted to remove those he considered inferior or beneath the Aryan race. Hitler specifically targeted those who were physically and mentally handicapped, Jehovah's Witnesses, Romas, Slavs, and many others. Hitler and the Nazis used propaganda, such as posters, radio shows, and movies, to turn Aryan Germans against their Jewish neighbors. Germans responded by destroying Jewish homes, businesses, and churches. And these are some propaganda posters that were created. The Holocaust was the systematic, state-sponsored killing of 11 million innocent people, 6 million of whom were Jews. It began in 1933 when Hitler and the Nazis gained power in Germany and lasted until 1945. During the Holocaust, Hitler targeted men, women, and children he felt to be inferior or beneath the pure Germans. Beginning in 1941, every Jewish person was required to wear the yellow Star of David and forced to live in crowded areas called the ghettos. A few months later, Jews began to be deported to concentration camps. And these camps were basically killing facilities with gas chambers that killed thousands of people at a time. When Germany began losing World War II, they started killing thousands of Jews each day. Hitler wanted to hide the evidence of the mass killing and ordered as many camps as possible to be destroyed. As the Allies moved across Europe in 1945, they came across some camps and were horrified at what they found. Survivors were nearly skeletons from lack of food, and piles of corpses were everywhere. The Allied forces freed camps that still had surviving prisoners. Some of the prisoners or survivors were afraid to go back to their former homes and had nowhere to go. In 1948, the UN, or United Nations, created the State of Israel, a place for Jewish immigrants to call home. Let's look at how Nazism ended. In 1945, the Allied forces closed in on the Germans and their defeat was imminent, which means it could not be avoided. When Hitler realized what was happening, he retreated to an underground bunker and committed suicide on April 30th, 1945. The Nazis' reign of terror was over. All symbols of Nazism were outlawed. And that is the end of this portion of Standard 3A and B. Stay tuned for the next piece of European history.